The Life of Osamu Dazai, Bungo Stray Dogs. Osamu Dazai is a member of the Armed Detective Agency and former executive of the underworld organization, Port Mafia. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Osamu Dazai. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. 15 Arc. Ogai Mori met Osamu Dazai at 14 years old when he took him in as a patient who had recently attempted suicide. On that same night, Mori murdered the dying former boss of the Port Mafia, whose only aim at that time was more death and destruction with a young Dazai as his only witness. He then told Dazai the cover story, that the boss died of a serious illness and that his dying wish was for Mori to succeed him. Dazai eventually developed a casual relationship with Mori, who took him in as a ward. Though the young Dazai was not yet part of the Mafia, Mori had intentions to raise him as his right-hand man. During this time, Dazai continued to attempt suicide, much to Mori's chagrin. Originally believing them to be in the same boat, Mori quickly learned that he was mistaken when he discovered the young boy was far darker and wiser than he believed. He and Chuya used to be partners during his days in the Mafia, and together, after they had decimated the entirety of an enemy organization in one night, they became notoriously dubbed as the criminal underworld's worst enemy, earning the title Twin Dark. Dark Era Arc. During the events of the Dark Era, Dazai was one of the 5 Port Mafia executives. He was the youngest person to become an executive in Port Mafia history, being considered as an executive before he was even 16, and a living legend within the Mafia as well, to the extent that there is a saying going around in the Mafia: the misfortune of Dazai's enemies is to have Dazai as their enemy. In the years he was an executive, roughly half of the Mafia's overall profits could be solely attributed to him, to the extent that Ogai Mori mentioned that, given another 4 or 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised if Dazai killed me and took over my position. He was also a specialist at torturing people for information, claiming to Koyo Ozaki that there hasn't been a single prisoner who hasn't spilled everything under my interrogation. He even gave Akutagawa Spartan training in using his ability, and was the one who gave Akutagawa the idea of cutting space to shield himself. The trigger for Dazai leaving the Mafia was his old friend Oda Sakunosuke, a low-ranked Mafia member, who was killed in the conflict between Port Mafia and Mimic, orchestrated by Mori to obtain an official license from the government, proof of the government expressing silent consent of Port Mafia's existence and its activities as an organization. Already distraught from the knowledge that Mori intentionally drove Oda Sakunosuke into a suicidal attack against the enemy commander, Dazai took Oda's last words to heart. I know it makes no difference to you, but please become a good human being. Save the weak, protect the orphaned. I suppose you don't care for either justice or evil, but striving to be a better person is a wonderful thing, and decided to leave the Mafia. It is stated by Akutagawa that during a mission, he suddenly aborted it and supposedly defected from the Mafia. Dazai later tracked down Taneda, who was the acting commander for the Japanese Ministry's Special Abilities Division, and requested to work in a place where he can help people. Taneda initially thought that Dazai wanted a position in the Special Abilities Division, and so expressed hesitancy, but Dazai said that he does not do well in a place with too many rules. Taneda then recommended the Armed Detective Agency to Dazai, on the condition that he'll need at least 2 years laying low to cleanse his past. Later, it was his friend Anko Sakaguchi who assisted him with that. It is unknown what he was doing during those 2 years, but it is mentioned by Dazai himself, though the extent of the truth of the matter is unknown, that before meeting the Armed Detective Agency, he was unemployed and unmotivated, and drunk in a bar that he used to frequent. Azure Apostle Arc. Dazai had eaten some weird mushrooms following his guidebook for suicide and acted weird in front of Atsushi and Kunikida. Following an anonymous tip, they managed to save a kidnapped woman, Nobuko Sasaki, but a few others died from gas. The next day, Dazai was messing with Kunikida about his ideal girl and glasses. When Kunikida realized something, he called their taxi informant and revealed he was the kidnapper, who confessed but revealed he was being forced and wanted protection. Following his information, they went to a place they had received a request from the anonymous tipper about disarming a bomb. On the next day, Dazai was speaking with Sasaki in a cafe, where Kunikida and Atsushi later came. As they discussed the bomb, Dazai asked Sasaki about her opinion, and she suggested the culprit was related to Azure King. Dazai then tried hooking up Kunikita with Sasaki as he was her type, and even revealed Kunikita's type to Sasaki, but she thought it was too much. They received news from Ranpo, as he was done with his case and he told them where the bomb was. Heading towards it, the bomb squad had already found it but weren't able to disarm it. The three of them received calls from Ranpo, Rokuzo, and the president. With the new information, they went towards a former defense facility where they get attacked. Kunikita ended up fighting a man who could put a number on him and freely control him. Dazai and Atsushi looked at how to disarm the bomb but found out they need a key to deactivate it. A large man then came and started beating them. As they didn't stand a chance, Kunikita saw Dazai and managed to switch places with him, taking out the man, while Dazai neutralized the other man's ability. Kunikita then recreated the key needed to stop the bomb and they managed to disarm it. The next day, Dazai had figured it all out and called Kunikita to the abandoned hospital, where he said the culprit will also come after he receives the message. As Rokuzo came, Kunikita thought he was the culprit, but Dazai explained he probably hacked his email which he used to call the culprit. Sasaki then came and shot Rokuzo, revealing that the Azure King was her boyfriend and that she was the Azure Messenger. As Dazai couldn't shoot her, he dropped his gun, which was picked up by the dying Rokuzo, and he ended up killing her. Dazai mentioned that the Kunikita ideal may one day lead him on the path of the Azure King, but Kunikita assured him he will not turn out like him. Port Mafia Arc. Dazai first appears floating down a river, apparently trying to commit suicide until he was accidentally found by a starved Atsushi. Afterward, he and his colleague Kunikita treat Atsushi to food while listening to his story about how he ends up at a river while hungry. He then introduces himself and Kunikita as part of the armed detective agency, and they would like to hunt down the tiger that is apparently following Atsushi and terrorizing the areas wherever he goes. At night, while Dazai and Atsushi wait for the tiger to show up, he realizes all of the clues that led Atsushi to be confused about the tiger matched up to be the fact that Atsushi actually was the tiger. As Atsushi loses control of himself and transforms into a full-grown tiger, he's easily subdued by Dazai's ability, no longer human, and loses consciousness. Dazai then brings Atsushi back to the dorm where the agency members are staying. The next day, he calls Atsushi for help because he's stuck in an oil barrel trying to commit suicide and gives him the address of the agency at the same time. As they walk, Dazai mentions he can recommend him for a job, but there's a test. Kunikita then arrives, informing them of a bomber at their agency office. When they arrive, they see the bomber having a hostage, and while wondering what to do, Dazai beats Kunikita at rock, paper, scissors, so Kunikita has to face the bomber. As the bomber recognizes him and keeps his distance from Kunikita, Dazai realizes they need to use someone, not from the agency, and makes Atsushi pretend to be the newspaper boy and a worthless human. As Atsushi was talking to the bomber, he eventually made an opening for Kunikita to disarm him, but while Kunikita is then arguing with Dazai, the bomber manages to free himself and activates the bomb. Having no other choice, Atsushi decides to use his body to lower the explosion damage, but the bomb doesn't explode. Dazai then reveals that this is the test the job has mentioned. Their president then enters and explains that Dazai had recommended Atsushi and they had to test him. Atsushi wasn't sure if he wants to join them, but as Dazai kept explaining how bad his current life was, and how it will get even worse due to his tiger transformations, Atsushi has no choice but to accept. At a cafe, the group is getting to know each other, and Dazai makes Atsushi guess each member's previous job. As he correctly does for all, Dazai reveals that he has a reward for the job, and that excites Atsushi, who then starts randomly guessing professions, but isn't able to guess right. They receive the news of a client in their office and they go to speak with her. Upon seeing the client, Dazai quickly approaches her, proposing their suicide together, but Kunikita then takes him to the other room and beats him. After hearing her request, Kunikita assigns Atsushi and Tanizaki, and they go with the client. Dazai remains in his office, listening to music with his headphones, saying that he's waiting for a sign. As the client leads Atsushi to a dead-end alley and reveals she was a Port Mafia member, Dazai realizes something. A bit later, he manages to go where they were and sees Akutagawa and Atsushi fighting, so he uses his ability to stop both of their attacks. Dazai then reveals he planted a listening device on the client's pocket, and was listening to all of their conversations. She wanted to fight him, but Akutagawa decided it would be better that they leave and revealed that Dazai was an ex-Port Mafia member. Ranpo and Atsushi were assigned to a murder case at the river. The net then caught something, and as they pulled it out, they saw it was Dazai, who explains he was just floating himself and not attempting suicide, as he wants to now make double suicide with a beautiful woman. As he saw the dead body of an attractive woman, he regrets that she died and that she could have committed suicide with him, but was sure that Rampo will solve her case. Rampo was then allowed to solve the case and realized her killer was another police officer. After solving the case and going back towards the agency, Dazai explains that Rampo wasn't gifted and he didn't have the ability. It was the first time he saw Rampo using his ability, so he touched his hair to neutralize it, but since it didn't have an effect, he knew Rampo wasn't gifted. Dazai explains that he himself already solved half of the case, but likely Rampo noticed a few more details to completely solve it. At night, Dazai wanders the streets and encounters a girl in a kimono who tucks on his sleeve. She activates her ability and soon takes him to their base. Akutagawa later visits his chained ex-mentor, and the two exchange hostile pleasantries. Dazai states how he has been a chore to train in the past, and claims that his new subordinate is a lot better than Akutagawa himself, provoking the latter. Dazai's former partner, Chuya Nakahara, later visits him in his cell and asks his motive for getting himself captured by the Mafia. He tells him that he had simply been caught and is awaiting execution, but Chuya thinks otherwise, knowing how elusive Dazai is to be easily captured. Chuya then removes Dazai's shackles and challenges him to a duel. As Dazai reveals how he has already unchained himself, he quips if Chuya can ever foil his plan, upon which the mafioso charges at him. Chuya easily overwhelms Dazai in physical combat and asks him again to state his true motive for capture, to which Dazai admits that it is all for Atsushi. He then tells Chuya that he has sent a letter to the executives threatening to spill the Mafia's secrets should Dazai get killed. As Chuya soon realizes Dazai's setup, he ends up telling Dazai where the Mafia's records, that might reveal who placed the bounty on Atsushi, are kept. He later sneaks into the archive room and discovers the one responsible for Atsushi's bounty, much to his surprise. The Guild Arc. After slacking off following his capture, Dazai soon returns to the agency. He also advises a panicking Atsushi that it is his job to look after his new roommate Kyoka, which Atsushi accepts. He then states that the one who placed the bounty on Atsushi is a North American gifted organization known as the Guild. Tanizaki bursts in and tells them that the Guild has just arrived at their office. Their leader, Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald, asked to purchase the agency from the Fukuzawa, an offer which the president rejects. The following morning, the agency is unsettled by the possible actions undertaken by the Guild, including how a Mafia-affiliated building vanished overnight, and how Kenji Miyazawa has turned missing after seeing the visitors out of the office the previous day. Dazai and Kunikita convene with the president, while Tanizaki and Atsushi head out to search for Kenji. The agency soon inadvertently enters into a three-way conflict with Port Mafia and the Guild. Mafia executive Koyo Ozaki is captured by the agency, whom Dazai and Atsushi later converse with within the agency infirmary. Atsushi gets angry at her for causing Kyoka's disappearance after the Guild's surprise attack on them, and transforms his arm into a tiger limb, but Dazai quickly stops him from rampaging by nullifying his ability. Asking Atsushi to leave the matter to his hands, Dazai threateningly turns to Koyo to settle the issue. Dazai then makes a deal with her in an effort to save Kyoka, which includes having to get her arrested, after which he shall have a judicial arrangement with the Special Division for Unusual Powers. He claims that such a way shall allow Kyoka to enter the agency and save her in the process. Koyo deems it impossible, but Dazai assures her that the former Mafia that she hated is now long gone. The current Mafia is now different, and Dazai can thus assure her that her fate will not befall Kyoka. As Koyo reminisces that the man she loved before promised her to take her into the Radiant World, Dazai urges her to do the same thing for Kyoka and take her out into the light herself. Later, the agency convenes at the Bankodo Hall, where Dazai explains their strategy. To make up for their numbers, they shall split into various teams, one defense team and two offense teams. Dazai is paired with Atsushi as one offense team, Tanizaki is partnered with Kunikita as another offense team, and Fukuzawa, Rampo, Yosano, and Kenji comprise the defense team. Dazai then finishes with their main objective, which is to keep their base hidden as possible, after which Fukuzawa declares that they must survive the three-way ability war. Dazai and Atsushi later await Naomi and Kirako Haruno's passenger train from the Guild's hitmen. Atsushi worries how the agency can pull through the conflict, though Dazai thinks that they can turn the tide by about 300 ways. Nonetheless, Dazai recognizes the Mafia's most advantageous position compared to their least advantageous, considering Mori's logical and cunning calculations. Since the clerks have now let down their guard, Dazai reckons that Mori shall exploit such vulnerability. Dazai's stomach later aches, possibly from the dog treats he ate. He then leaves Atsushi behind and heads out. Knowing he's being tailed, Dazai urges the mafioso following him to come out. He then greets Gin and Higuchi, asking why they have come, considering that there are too few of them for a possible assassination attempt on his life. Higuchi delivers a message from Mori, which invites Dazai to return to the Mafia as an executive. Dazai merely laughs at the invitation, upon which Higuchi remarks how his Mafia records prove his sadistic tendencies that surpass possibly anyone else. Dazai retorts that people do change, citing Gin as an example from being a little girl when he last saw her, which gets Gin flustered. Though Dazai turns down Mori's offer, he wonders why Mori would waste such manpower on him. Higuchi informs him that they are to protect him after Mori has freed Q from captivity, leaving Dazai aghast. Initially in disbelief, Dazai soon realizes that Atsushi may already be in peril. As Dazai returns, he finds the cursed Atsushi having attacked Haruno and now strangling Naomi, asking him to come to his senses. As Atsushi grasps the situation, Dazai grabs Q's ripped doll and nullifies the ability to end the curse. Aboard the departing train, Q sends their regards to Dazai and threatens to kill him for locking them up before, while Dazai assures them that he shall hollow out their heart in the future rather than mere imprisonment. As Atsushi undergoes a breakdown, Dazai slaps him and lectures him not to pity himself, lest his life will be an unceasing nightmare. As Dazai realizes that he must also dirty his hands under such circumstances, Dazai decides to drag the government into the war for their counterattack. Soon after, Dazai meets with Ango, the assistant counselor of the Special Division. He cheerfully greets Ango, only to snatch the latter's gun to point it at him out of grudge. Dazai wonders how he thinks he has already forgiven him, only for Ango to remind him that he is the one who has cleaned his ledger. Knowing that Ango has anticipated the situation, and that the gun is therefore not loaded, Dazai returns it to Ango and suggests they go for a ride. Dazai briefs Ango on the guild's recent movements in Yokohama, but Ango and the Special Division are actually aware of their activities. He explains that the guild is a secret society whose members all have diplomatic rights and cannot, therefore, be held in legal custody. As a result, the Special Division cannot make any rash action so as not to disrupt any connections with the guild. Ango then asks Dazai to run and tell his comrades that they are in danger, after which a vehicle rams into their car. Later, Dazai returns to the agency after Atsushi gets abducted by the guild. At some point, he presumably lines up some smokescreen capsules down the streets as a precautionary measure and watches the sky on the office balcony. As Atsushi jumps off the Moby Dick with Q's doll, Dazai eventually intervenes in his fight with Mark Twain. Approaching Atsushi, Dazai nullifies the curse by touching the doll and sets off a saturation chaff smokescreen that emanates from the capsules, jamming Twain's infrared sensors and radar. Dazai and Atsushi retreat to a nearby nook. Although they have stopped the cursed rampage, Dazai tells Atsushi that Q is still in the guild's confinement and can launch the same attack how many times they want. He adds that the Special Division is currently frozen and cannot therefore collaborate with them. Recalling the quote he once read in a book, that the head may err but never the blood, Atsushi recommends a solution in fighting the guild, forming an alliance with Port Mafia. As Atsushi conveys the suggestion to the president, Fukuzawa soon takes Dazai to set up a secret meeting with the Mafia. The following morning, Dazai is quite unenthusiastic and tries to get cheered up by Kunikida, who wonders why he keeps complaining despite recently saving Yokohama together with Atsushi. Dazai explains how he feels off with the next assignment given to him by the president regarding Atsushi's plan on their next course of action. Fukuzawa enters and Dazai updates him about the arrangement of the secret meeting with Mori. Dazai thinks that Mori shall accept the proposal, and as he sees it to be an opportunity to assassinate Fukuzawa. The latter then takes his leave while Kunikida gets surprised on his assignment, more so because he is the one planning the meeting. Dazai informs him that he has been tasked with such a mission because he is formerly from the Mafia, causing Kunikida to collapse out of shock. Later, Dazai welcomes Mori and his entourage to commence the secret meeting. In the end, the two parties soon arrive at the conclusion that they cannot have an alliance. As the Mafia leaves, Mori tells Dazai that his invitation to return as a Mafia executive still stands, to which Dazai quips if the boss is quite afraid that he might kill him soon, like how Mori killed his predecessor. In the end, Dazai states how he is also against collaborating with the Mafia. At night, Dazai heads to Q's location, where he gets cornered by Steinbeck, Lovecraft, and various guild operatives. Lovecraft gets stuck with a boulder hurled by Chuya, much to Dazai's irritation upon realizing they have to work together for their counterattack. Steinbeck summons his grapevines, but Dazai easily nullifies his ability, after which Chuya subdues Steinbeck. Afterward, Dazai and Chuya retrieve Q in their doll, while Dazai keeping Q alive as insurance that the Mafia does not kill him due to his nullification ability. They soon encounter Lovecraft, whose attacks Dazai cannot nullify. He concludes that his tentacles are not an ability. As Lovecraft transforms into a humongous creature, Dazai urges Chuya to activate corruption, which the mafioso begrudgingly uses. Nearby, Dazai asks Steinbeck at knife point regarding Lovecraft's true form, but Steinbeck refuses to spill any intel to him. Nonetheless, Dazai sees through his words and detonates a bomb he has embedded earlier in Lovecraft's core, having Chuya finish him off. As corruption keeps Chuya on a rampage, Dazai nullifies his ability and asks him to rest. Before he falls to unconsciousness, Chuya asks Dazai to bring him back to base. In the end, Dazai leaves him behind and returns on his own. Later, as Dazai and Rampo plan their next action after retrieving intel on Moby Dick, Dazai tasks Atsushi to solo infiltrate the aerial fortress. He explains that Atsushi is a combat type and high-speed ability user who has already been aboard the aircraft and would only be captured rather than killed if he ever gets caught, making him the most suitable choice for the mission. Atsushi eventually accepts the task. Dazai visits the hospitalized Ango, cheerfully informing him that Yosano has agreed to heal his injuries following their car crash. Ango sees through his scheme and asks what he wants in return, to which Dazai asks for his intervention in freeing a captured agency subordinate. Ango admits that the Special Division can pardon a killer of 35 people, provided that she is an official member of the agency. He also hints that they can offer their services to the agency in purging the guild. As Dazai takes his leave, Ango asks him why only his airbags malfunctioned in the car crash, but Dazai merely responds with a dark smile. As Atsushi successfully infiltrates the aircraft, he informs Dazai through the comms that the ship is devoid of its crew, except for Herman Melville, for whom Dazai hears about the guild's next plan of crashing Moby Dick to Yokohama. Atsushi urges them to abort the mission, but Dazai tells him that he must stop the descent himself, being the only one aboard Moby Dick. Dazai is soon contacted by Mori, who tells him that a report he has received from his subordinate has compelled him to overlook their mutual agreement to a temporary ceasefire, having sent Akutagawa on board Moby Dick as well. Realizing that Akutagawa has now encountered Atsushi, Dazai instructs Atsushi on how to throw off Akutagawa from their path, which lets Atsushi successfully escape. Dazai then contacts Kyoka, who is confined in a UAV that isolates dangerous ability users. He gives her instructions on how to land the aircraft after negotiating with the Special Division, but she refuses to follow and has given up hope. Dazai admits that the agency has no reason to save her given that she is not an official member, whose entrance exam thinks that she will fail either way. Dazai then wonders if she thinks that a former killer cannot become a good person, since he himself does not believe such a case. Dazai understands how she thinks that she is not suited for the agency, but he dismisses the thought and lectures her on possibilities, just like Atsushi, who was previously regarded as a beast, who took her in, and who is now fighting with his life on the line for the sake of others. Knowing that Kyoka is at a loss, Dazai convinces her that it is but human to lose one's way and dash recklessly along with life like stray dogs rather than trying to find purpose in life or what they fight for. Later, Dazai is updated by Atsushi about the hacking of Moby Dick. Eventually, Kyoka collides the UAV she is in with Moby Dick and diverts the ship's course. As Atsushi is distraught with Kyoka's fate, Dazai and Fukuzawa arrive to tell him that Kyoko has passed her agency entrance exam at the moment she has decided to save Yokohama. As a result, the president's inhibiting ability that only works on his agency subordinates has activated and allowed Kyoka to freely control her ability, enabling her to have Demon Snow cut off her shackles and escape in time, much to Atsushi's relief. Akutagawa calls on Dazai to prove and show him his improvement, only for Dazai to recognize how he has grown strong, causing Akutagawa to faint. After the Guild War, Dazai meets up with Hirotsu at an art museum. They observe an artwork that Dazai deems to be quite strange and amicably reminisces on Dazai's last painting that Elise thought was cursed. Dazai then thanks Hirotsu for a great help in the war. Though all that Hirotsu did was spill the Moby Dick infiltration plan to Higuchi, Dazai claims it to be sufficient for Akutagawa to learn all about it from Higuchi and charge in on his own. Hirotsu asks his aim in bringing Atsushi and Akutagawa together. Dazai tells him that he wishes to test if the two can become a new generation of twin dark in fighting the real disaster that lurks beneath. He admits that he might not anticipate the next actions of the demon he once met in the past, though he knows that the latter must have already started moving. In the anime, Hirotsu further asks Dazai why he cherishes Yokohama so much, to which Dazai responds that his old friend once told him to become a good man if both sides are the same. As he states how saving people has made him feel better, Hirotsu remarks and wonders if it is flawless. The Guild Aftermath Arc. Following the battle with the Guild, Dazai and the other drained agency members are updated by Atsushi about criminal organizations eyeing the Guild's alleged fortune. The next day, he and the others find Cafe Uzumaki ransacked and learn that the gang responsible was looking for them. They instantly locate the gang, which Dazai and the others confront. As they return to the cafe, Tanizaki wonders about the Guild's fortune, which Dazai thinks they must have already been slyly collected by Fyodor. They are later introduced to Lucy, the cafe's new waitress. Later, when Atsushi and Tanizaki investigate the death of the director from Atsushi's orphanage, Dazai urges Tanizaki to give Atsushi some time alone. He soon comes up to Atsushi, who is quite conflicted on how to feel after getting to know the director's past. Dazai advises him that, though his director indeed made him experience hell, it cultivated a strong will in him. He acknowledges if Atsushi does not forgive him, albeit taking his leave by saying that people cry when their fathers pass away. Sometime later, when Kunikita finishes his day's perfect schedule, Dazai is bent on obstructing him. He contacts all the people that Kunikita cares about, including Master Carlyle, whom Kunikita greatly admires, and invites him to their office in an attempt to break Kunikita's schedule. In the end, Kunikita resentfully asks Dazai to give his regards to the artisan, leading Dazai to desperately think of other ways to disrupt Kunikita. At the end of the day, he tells his co-members that the one selected to be the next agency president is Kunikita. Cannibalism Arc. Dazai and the rest of the agency discover that a masked assassin has been recently attacking numerous ability users at night, including Fukuzawa. As Dazai deduces that the Mafia might already be on the move to catch the culprit, he heads to the back alley where the president was attacked and, examining the site, identifies the criminal's identity. Eventually, Dazai confronts Fyodor at an alley and asks him about the poison that afflicts Fukuzawa. He adds that he knows the Russians' aim to acquire the book, which then requires pitting the agency and the Mafia against each other. Fyodor tells him about the cannibalism virus affecting Fukuzawa and Mori, which is almost impossible to remove and even nullify, except if one of them kills the other to survive. He is then shot by Fyodor's sniper, to which Dazai expresses anticipation. Pointing out their difference despite their distinct similarity, Dazai coaxes Fyodor to proceed with their plan if they can. Afterward, he is brought to the hospital and undergoes an operation for his shot. While recovering from his injury, Dazai is updated by Tanizaki regarding recent events, including how no one has yet found where the president went. Talking about Soseki Natsume, an ability user rumored to be the strongest in Yokohama. He then spots Haruno's pet cat by his window, carrying a dried sardine in its teeth. The sardine turns out to carry intel from Natsume himself, after which Dazai soon discards it. Dazai soon makes Atsushi and Akutagawa collaborate in catching the virus ability user, holding them down in their truck to prevent them from using their abilities. Atsushi is hesitant that Akutagawa will work together with him, but Dazai notes the mafioso's extreme concentration, especially 4 years after Dazai left his former apprentice. They soon arrive at the Rat's hideout. Dazai and Kunikita head out for their own mission after Atsushi and Akutagawa enter the hideout covertly. Later, Dazai manages to contact Atsushi and advises him not to get even a slight scratch, as the virus can be acquired through open wounds. He urges them to catch Plushkin and leave Fyodor to him. Tanizaki and Kenji monitor the exits from above the coal mine and update Dazai about the activities happening, such as a horde of vehicles exiting the coal mine. Dazai asks them to ignore it, including the subsequent ones they see. Though Tanizaki panics upon why Dazai does not give the order, Dazai quips that they must not waste their manpower in capturing a demon. Tanizaki soon tells Dazai about the chopper near the site, while Kenji tells them of a lone man on the ground casually walking. Dazai orders to capture the lone man. To their dismay, their target is not Fyodor. Dazai seeks out the help of Fitzgerald in catching Fyodor, eventually encountering him at a cafe through Eyes of God. As Fyodor spots the two, Dazai reveals that his move required the recovery of the guild's fortune that Fyodor swiped from Fitzgerald. Bungo and his men soon arrive to apprehend Fyodor. As an operative touches Fyodor to shackle him, the man dies instantly. In the end, Fyodor surrenders. Fitzgerald asks Dazai what Fyodor's ability is, but Dazai also has no idea himself. In the aftermath, Dazai and the agency hold a banquet at a luxury liner given to them by Fitzgerald. As Atsushi approaches Dazai, the latter asks how teaming up with Akutagawa was, to which Atsushi voices how they are not compatible at all. Atsushi also tells them about their 6-month deal about how Atsushi asks Akutagawa not to kill anyone in 6 months if the mafioso wishes to kill him then, leading Dazai to remember a mafioso who does not kill. 2 days before the eventual terrorism incident, Dazai meets with Akutagawa in the forest where they first met. Dazai asks Akutagawa to tail Atsushi and become his eyes without taking any sides and remaining undetected in the following days. Dazai assures him that he shall save everyone, but Akutagawa refuses his directive since he couldn't care less about the agency nor the were-tiger. However, Dazai believes that Akutagawa would save him nonetheless. After Dazai tells him his mission, Akutagawa asks why they chose him. Dazai explains that the first time they met, when Akutagawa is recruited to the Mafia, and when Dazai made him work with Atsushi, are all for his plan of fostering a new generation of twin Dart. Moreover, at an unknown point in time, Dazai apparently allies himself with Ango to be one of his collaborators prior to or during his eventual incarceration. Hunting Dogs Arc. A month after the events of Cannibalism, the agency is conferred the Shikuyu Award for their services in helping preserve the peace and order in Yokohama. Meanwhile, at a racetrack, Dazai is approached by a blind man and asks about the results of the race, which Dazai responds to. The man claims that he knows Dazai's fate for the following day, which he deems shall never come for him. Dazai is then cuffed and arrested by the hunting dog, charged with complicity in 136 murders, 312 extortion cases, 625 cases of fraud, and other sundry crimes as a former Port Mafia executive. Dazai calmly admits not noticing himself being followed, especially by a hunting dog. Jono then reveals upon hearing Dazai's resentment and asserts how it shall soon turn into terror and fear of punishment. Dazai eventually asks why they have come at such a time, to which the man tells how pieces of evidence suddenly resurfaced as if a light had been switched on. Later on, Dazai is brought to and detained in the European facility, Merceau. Upon coming to, he announces having prevented Fyodor's assassination on Fitzgerald, greeting him across his cell to directly engage the Russian himself. Initially playing around with each other through their coded language, they soon simultaneously ask each other how they are contacting their allies outside, both of which refuse to divulge yet threaten to eventually figure out themselves. In truth, Dazai's way of external communication is through Ango by manipulating his heart rate and allowing his vital signs tracker to record messages in form of a numerical code. In turn, with his government clearance, Ango accesses and decodes Dazai's messages. Later, Fyodor suddenly asks what he knows of the 5th hunting dog, but Dazai notes that he does not know much about him except that he can manipulate metal. Fyodor is curious how the agency can fare against such an adversary. Sky Casino Arc. During the hunt for the agency at the Sky Casino, as Dazai and Fyodor play chess in prison, Dazai summons his queen piece to the battlefield, whom Fyodor claims to be Lucy Maud Montgomery in the agency's operation. Dazai's plan appears to incite an all-out war in the Sky Casino, whose coin bombs shall be used by the terrorists to cause first-hand slaughters and an economic halt that might possibly cause a global economic crisis. Hence, his allies are to capture casino manager Sigma, a Decay of Angels member who knows the page's location, prevent terrorism, and gain the hunting dogs as allies. Dazai asks why Fyodor chose Sigma as his rock, so Fyodor reveals that Sigma has no history. The only known thing about him is his ability. Dazai then conjectures that the page gave birth to the Sky Casino only 8 days ago along with its 13-year history. Fyodor quips that the strongest in their game and the scariest thing in the world are those who have nothing else, such as Sigma, an ordinary person filled with desperation. Dazai is unconvinced, so he urges Fyodor to reveal his true aim. Fyodor then tells him that Sigma is born from the book out of nothing, much to Dazai's shock. With Sigma's fall and the agency's apparent defeat, Dazai is unsettled with Fyodor, though the latter claims that he merely prayed to God, who in turn listened to him. After all, Fyodor asserts that God prefers perfection and harmony, hinting that they placed a line in the book that all police forces are to disregard any evidence proving the agency's innocence. Dazai laughs at his comment, retorting that God's gimmicks are accidental and illogical rather than perfect, and that those who truly make the world go round are those who persist and fight amidst constant change. He adds that humans may be sinful and foolish, but far from boring. Kamui Revelation Arc. Dazai and Fyodor continue playing their games and detainment, with which Fyodor gets concerned about Dazai's lax behavior towards his fellow agency members. Dazai retorts that his only task to do by then is watch over Fyodor, while he lets the agency's strongest man, who has transcended even ability users, move freely. Vampire Infection Outbreak Arc. At Merceau, the security is seen in chaos as invaders have been detected at the dock exit of the establishment. Dazai and Fyodor are in the middle of their meal when Dazai brings up the noise outside. However, Fyodor just dismisses him that it is impossible, as the place they are in is an ability space. After finishing their meal, Dazai brings up that it's time for them to do a certain thing. Fyodor asks Dazai about what he is talking about, to which Dazai replies that it is about who is gonna die. Fyodor agrees to the idea and tells them that it's time for them to escape. Suddenly, Fyodor disappears from his cell, for which Dazai sees after describing it as a quick escape. Suddenly, the floor inside Dazai's cell opens up, transporting him to an unknown area in Merceau. There, he finds Sigma and Gogol, where the latter gladly tells that his trick was a success. After the escape, both Dazai and Fyodor are welcomed by Gogol. Gogol then proposes a jailbreak duel between Fyodor and Dazai to fulfill his plan of rescuing Fyodor as well as killing him. After Gogol's proposition, Dazai and Fyodor smirk and accept Gogol's challenge. After the proposal, Dazai and Fyodor are given lethal injections which will lead to their death in 30 minutes. The lethal injections are to be injected by Dazai and Fyodor to themselves. Dazai then smilingly injects the lethal poison to himself, as well as Fyodor. They are then given information about the facility's structure and security, which will be obstacles and will hinder them from escaping the place. The two are soon presented with 4 items on which each of them is allowed to bring aid to their escape. After Gogol's explanations of each of the items, he lets Fyodor choose his weapon first. Fyodor proceeds to choose a keycard as his weapon. Dazai then points to Sigma and chooses him as a weapon for his escape, which leaves everyone shocked. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.